Today's guest is Charlie Johnson. Charlie is a world-renowned body transformation coach. So, Charlie Johnson, welcome to the Lifestyle Lifters Show. Thank you so much for being here.
Pleasure, dude. Really appreciate the invite. And my goal today is just to give anyone listening to this as much value as possible, or hopefully help you level up mentally and also physically. So we'll try and give you some like pure value to take away from this. So make sure you've got a pen and paper available.
Unbelievable, unbelievable. And before we dive into the value, Charlie, let's just one thing. Before you share your backstory, share something about yourself, Charlie, because you've got a big following, you've got a big audience, but share something about yourself that most people do not know.
This is actually the thing that most people probably don't know is I'm actually naturally an introvert and very shy, which we'll come back to in terms of like the beginning and how everything started for me. So that's one of the things where I think people need to understand, like everything is like a coachable skill when you can learn things. So for example, when I was younger, I was really uncomfortable about talking to people I didn't know. I would never be able to even like have my photo taken my top off. I wouldn't like, even the first time I had like not big Instagram, I had like followers on Instagram and had started like social media. First time I did a YouTube video, I was like, I shit myself and I couldn't talk. And then I did my own podcast after I'd done YouTube for a while. And I found it really weird and difficult talking to a microphone on my own. And then one big thing I say to everyone with that is that like being uncomfortable is a good thing. And like discomfort is a sign of growth. So you actually want to seek discomfort and pain. And that's one of the big things that's going to help you develop as a person, both physically and mentally, is by seeking discomfort. Because I know it's super cliche. People talk about like you grow outside your comfort zones, but there is a lot of truth in that. And the more I try and almost like throw myself into the deep end and like try and swim, the more I level up faster, if that makes sense.
I love it. Feel the fear and do it anyways. I love it, Charlie. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And Charlie, would you mind just sharing a bit about yourself, your backstory? I know how you would have previously played a bit of rugby and then that got you into the gym, which obviously, of course, developed your love for it. And just your transition from like corporate to full-time online and self-employed coach, Charlie.
Yeah, so it's quite an interesting story. So I was actually fairly overweight when I was younger, like 14, 15. I then got into rugby, played that at a fairly high standard. And from that, then ended up getting into weight training. The first time I ever actually went to the gym, I can remember it like it was yesterday. I went with a friend of mine. We went for like 4 hours, did every exercise in there. And then we went to KFC and ate loads of chicken because I thought that's how you got big, right? And I just felt really ill afterwards. But and for probably like 2-3 years I did loads of stupid shit that you shouldn't really do in the gym. So that is an example in terms of when I was younger, and I'm showing my age, we didn't have social media and like information to really know what to do. So anyone who's starting now, you're very lucky that there's people who put out a lot of content out there to really help you, because that wasn't necessarily available back then. But from that point, I was fairly athletic. I managed to lose some weight. I was in reasonable shape. I then qualified as a PT when I was about 18 because like, oh, I like the gym. Maybe this is what I should do.
Wow, really young, man.
Yeah, really, really young. And then, like, as most young guys thought I knew everything, like I actually really knew nothing when I look back. And I was training people and actually one of the gym group gyms in the UK in Guildford. And I absolutely fucking hated it. So like I was training people who I didn't want to train. They had no work ethic, super lazy. Anyone who's PT who listening to this will probably resonate with, like, you might have a client like this. And I was like, do you know what? I'm not really enjoying this. I went and did a ski season. So another random fact, I'm actually qualified ski instructor. So that's probably my other like.
No way, bro.
Yeah. And also, side note, if you put on like 15 kilos of muscle and then you try and do what you used to do on skis, it feels a bit weird. So I wouldn't recommend that. And then
some bombs have been dropped here.
Yeah. And then when I came back from doing a ski season, I then was like, do you know what? I'm not really sure I want to go into PT. There's not really any money in it. I don't really enjoy it because I wasn't training the right people I wanted to train. I was like, okay, let's go into like a friend of mine just started a job in a estate agent. So it's like, do you know what? It seems to be okay. He seems to be earning good money. Off we go. And I did that. So I started that when I was about 20, 21 maybe. And from there, I really flourished and I became the manager of that branch of estate agents within like 2-3 years, which was ludicrous at the time. And I stayed there until I was about 27. Now, where it got really interesting is when I was I was training throughout all this period, but I was never really in great shape. And I never really got in good shape until I was about 25, 26, where I think I did my first photo shoot. And a friend of mine egged me on to do it. And I was like, you know what, I'll just do it and see what happens. And I was literally like bricking myself. I was in great shape. I was like much smaller, massively underweight to do it, lost loads of muscle tissue, just all the wrong things. And I was literally like sweating taking photos because I was so nervous. So like for anyone who's out there, again, I'm talking about like different stages of pushing myself outside of my comfort zone. So like initially me having my photo taken topless, I was like bricking it. Now I'll do it in front of like hundreds of people in public and I couldn't care less. And it's one of those things you harden to things over a period of time. But from that point, I then did a photo shoot. I then regained loads of weight because I didn't understand how to reverse diet and all those sort of things. So I did all the typical mistakes you shouldn't do. The following year, I got in shape again and then decided to compete. And that was a really interesting experience. Again, I did everything wrong. Yeah. I trained for like 3 weeks solid with weights and I lost loads of muscle tissue, got very lean. But the one interesting thing I'd say from this is it's always really, really good to push yourself to a polar extreme. Now, the reason for this is like, I remember barely physically being able to walk down the street because I was so exhausted. Wow. Like I was working full-time job, training twice a day. And I was like, I could barely function. But guess what?
What were your calories at, Charlie? Probably
1,700 maybe.
Yeah.
And what happened from there is after I did the show, it left me feeling vacant and completely like got nothing from it really, other than the sense of achievement that I've managed to endure this diet. But I then suddenly realized how easy life is when you actually eat food and you feel a bit better. So like, there's a lot of value in pushing yourself to extremes to then like understand like, okay, if you were at level 10 for 5-6 weeks and you come back to level 7, you're like, oh, this is pretty easy. Like I can handle this. So there's some merit in that for everyone. And to cut a long story short, I then competed again the year after, twice more. I started to build my online business by using social media and basically sharing my journey. And another interesting story with this is the fact that I remember when I first started posting on Instagram, people were like, who the fuck does Charlie think he is? Why is he posting photos of himself topless on the internet? Like all the sort of usual stuff. And if I had let those people back then dictate what I wanted to do, I wouldn't now be living in Dubai and doing what I want. Yeah. And like having helped like 8,000 plus people, being in Forbes magazine, Men's Health, all this other stuff, because of some very small-minded people. So anyone out there, if there's people like who are saying you can't go and do something, go and prove them wrong, because that's ultimately down to you. And also often that will be the people closest to you. So your parents, your family, like they're going to be protective and try and hold you back because they don't want you to get uncomfortable, because they don't understand maybe what you're trying to achieve. Have you ever experienced anything like that?
So Charlie, I used to be a full-time teacher and permanent primary school teacher. So obviously with a primary school teacher, you know, you've got your fortnightly salary. It's a comfortable wage. It's guaranteed. But back December 2020, so 18 months now at this stage, I left that and I went full-time online. So, you know, you're going from obviously the safe and secure option, which you kind of previously spoke about, to I guess the world of the unknown. And I know a few people raise a few eyebrows. I know a few people laugh to me, but if, as you said, if you really want to do something, you kind of got to back yourself, surround yourself with the right people, and just invest in yourself, to invest in a coach, Charlie. And so man, I can absolutely relate to everything you've said there. It's so inspiring, by the way.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And if you don't believe in yourself, then who will? Is ultimately like that. That's an important thing to remember. And I'd also like, obviously you saying there you admire what I've done, and other people have say that to me quite a lot. And like, I still have the feeling all the time that I'm not enough. And like my girlfriend sitting in the other room will say that, like she can tell when I have that about me. And that's something, no matter what level you're at, you're always going to have, because I don't know, say for example, I might be at the top of my game in fitness or whatever, but in the scheme of like building wealth and huge businesses, it's small potatoes. And it's like, you always look up to people who are ahead of you. You don't necessarily look back, like behind you or where you've come. So a really important saying I would really like recommend anyone writing down is like, when you're scaling the mountain, it's important sometimes to stop to enjoy the view, because we get so like focused and like blinking, almost like a racehorse of just trying to look up the mountain, that we sometimes almost lose our way of what we're looking for. And interestingly, I recently read a book, Happy Sexy Millionaire by Steve Bartlett, and it really resonated with me because all the things that I had in my mind when I was younger of like, okay, you're going to have money, you're going to have abs, you're going to be semi-famous from social media or whatever, you live in Dubai, like everything will be fucking perfect, you'll be like fully fulfilled, you have everything you want. And the reality is that's not really true, because once you have those things, you're then like, what the fuck do I do now? And that's when you understand that it's not necessarily about achieving things, it's about who you become in the process of achieving things and enjoying that process, if that makes sense. And that was the same for me in terms of my transition from leaving my corporate job to then starting to work for myself.
Yeah.
Then starting to build my fitness business, then building 2 other businesses, like a new one I've done recently, and moving to Dubai, and like constantly trying to like take that step forwards. And interesting, like I think all men have like an addiction and a vice, and it's trying to find something that's more of a positive addiction than another one. So for me, it would be like progression and trying to achieve things and just getting better. And that is a blessing and a curse, but it also comes down to like the most important thing is like self-awareness and understanding yourself and how you think and feel, which is like a really big thing that I'm personally trying to focus on at the moment.
Wow, unbelievable, unbelievable. And Charlie, I'm just curious though, because you've scaled the biz. You've for anyone who isn't following on IG, you should be. He's got over Charlie Johnson Fitness. You've got over 560,000 followers. So I know for you, as you said, sure, like I'm doing really good in the fitness, but in the business, I always want to keep moving forward. But also too, you mentioned about like when you're on the mountain, you got to reflect on how far you've come. What does that look like in a practical sense for you, Charlie? Like, how do you kind of be, as Ed Milet called it, like blissfully dissatisfied, where you're happy with how far you've come, but you're always looking ahead? What's that like for you in your life?
If I said I knew the answer to that and I had achieved that, that would be a complete fucking lie. So the one thing that I have done, I'm going to give a really good example. So this is an amazing thing. I don't know where I got the idea from this, but I started doing this maybe 2 months ago, 6, 8 weeks ago. I have in front of me on my screen now, I've got 4 sticky notes. So one's like weekly personal goals, one's my business goals for the week. I have my monthly goals. And then I also have my goals for 2022. Now, what I do every Sunday is I'll sit down and I'll rewrite my week's goals for personal business, look back on last week's, and I'll also then look at the month's goals and look back at last month's goals. So at the start of this month, I was like, that was all right. It's a bit shit. And like, I basically have just started a new fitness business mastermind. So 7-figure scaling systems. I was like, without any advertising, first like 2 weeks, I wanted to try and sign up 2 clients, and without really doing anything. And that was my goal. I ended up signing up actually 10. And I hadn't even realized I had signed up that many. And I was not happy with having that like level of progression already, until I looked back and looked at my original goal that I set was like, I'd be happy if I got 2, but I actually got 5 times that and I still wasn't happy. And that's when you suddenly like, that's very interesting, because your brain is tricking you that whatever you achieve is never enough, because I'd 5x'd my goal, yet I still wasn't fulfilled. And that for me was a real like aha moment in terms of, you're never necessarily going to be satisfied, which is why it's important for you to set realistic goals and just be aware of what they are. And it'd be the same thing in terms of like your fitness or the way you look. Like,
Yes,
you'll always want to keep improving, and you're almost chasing the rainbow in some respects, which is great, but it's also important which is one of the big things that I'm focusing on at the moment, is trying to like enjoy the ride more. So for example, my personal goals, one of them has been to improve my relationships, trying to be more calm, have more thinking time, like reading more, like trying to like focus on other aspects of my brain rather than being like monologuely sort of focused on one aspect, because that can then become damaging to other areas of your life, which will then unravel everything else, if that makes sense.
unreal. Yeah. Because that is something that I definitely feel challenging myself, that you're always kind of looking ahead and the goalpost always moves, but sometimes you just got to be here and now and be present, and just acknowledge how far you've come, Charlie. Unbelievable stuff so far, Charlie. And most for listeners here, Charlie, so they are, working professionals, working 40 to 60 hours a week. And they want to, they want to look good, they want to feel good, but they also want to kind of socialize at the weekend. And obviously, Charlie, you're someone who is a world-renowned transformation coach. So, for someone who does want that body transformation, maybe not stepping up on stage, but they want to, have like some maybe visible definition around the tummy area there. what are like, do you feel are some of the most important practices that they need to understand in relation to like training, nutrition, and even mindset?
The two most important, I'll go down to a couple of different tangents. Number one for nutrition is understanding the only thing that works is energy balance and calories in versus calories out. So you will not lose body fat unless you're burning more calories than you do on a daily basis. And what is also a really important thing for people listening to this, and this is a really important one for you to hit home and understand why it's important that once you've lost some weight to be able to maintain it. Because what happens as your fat cells shrink, so when you lose weight, what actually happens, your fat cells don't disappear, you don't piss them out, whatever people think. Your fat cells actually shrink. So when your fat cells shrink, your fat cells release a hormone called leptin. And as fat cells get smaller, this reduces the release of the hormone leptin. Now, as this happens and the hormone leptin is coming down in the body, this actually reduces what's called your basal metabolic rate, which is your metabolism. It will also increase hunger levels. Now, if you think about this logically, so your metabolism's getting slower and you're getting hungrier, your body is actually trying to get you to add back weight back on. And this is due to something called body set point theory, where your body's trying to push you back up to where you were previously. Now, this is an important thing to understand, that when you're starting to get hungry, this is almost your body starting trying to trick you. And that's an important thing to really understand. The second thing I say to this is that once you do get to your lean body weight and where you want to be, you then need to be very, very careful, because your body is then primed to regain weight very quickly.
Of course.
Now, what happens if you eat too many calories too quickly? Your body can only essentially put so much energy into fat cells at a time. Now, if you have too much coming in, you can actually happen what's called hyperplasia, which is where your fat cells, as you gain weight, your fat cells grow. But if you put too many calories in too quickly, you will get what's hyperplasia, is where actually you increase the number of fat cells you have, and you can never get rid of those fat cells. And that's why when people go up and down in weight, like quite a lot, that they actually keep finding it more difficult to lose the weight again, because as they get older, they're actually increasing the number of fat cells they have, which means they have the ability to store more body fat, which actually makes it more difficult to lose, if that makes sense.
Unbelievable. So yeah, because as you kind of mentioned, you did your shoot, Charlie, the first time, and you didn't understand how to reverse diet out of it. So would you, because Charlie, I find what a lot of people feel challenged with. When they do get to their whatever their goal weight, their goal physique, the test of success comes where you kind of get comfortable. And then the next thing is, okay, how do I maintain this? But what people often make the mistake of doing is like eating how they previously would have done at it, would say a heavier weight when their maintenance calories were also higher. So let's just say, Charlie, that we go through like a 12-week transformation. We're at like a healthy body fat, and now we just want to maintain it. What would your kind of process look like, a recommendation for someone who's at their goal physique and now they want to hold on to it, or they've lost the weight and they don't want to rebound?
Initially, I would probably recommend most people increase their calories probably 20 to 30%, depending how lean they are. I would predominantly do that from carbohydrates. Now, the reason you do that pretty quickly from the beginning and from good healthy foods, is to make sure you're full and you're less likely to go off the rails, binge eat, because that's a slippery slope. So that would be the first big thing I'd look at. The second other thing is actually tracking stuff. So take your weight every day, make sure you're doing check-ins weekly, do progress photos, and actually track what you eat. Like if you do those things, you will be aware if you start to go off the rails, and you start to accumulate weight very quickly. So if you're weighing yourself constantly, say you weigh yourself every day, and then you're like, after 5 days, you've gone up a kilo, you'll be like, shit, I'm definitely overdoing this right now. Like you would then be able to put the brakes on it. Whereas if you didn't check the scales for 3 weeks and suddenly you're up 5 kilos, that's too late. And that's why it's important in terms of like what gets measured gets managed, if that makes sense.
Unbelievable. So we'll say, Charlie, if someone were to do like I think 12 weeks, it's usually like a pretty 90 days. It's a pretty solid, pretty like enough time to get a good like transformation, a good before and after. How long should someone then, do you feel, reverse diet if they were in that kind of dieting phase for about 12 weeks?
Normally probably about the same length of time, I would suggest. So like 6 to 12 weeks realistically. Most people often need more than 12 weeks to lose the weight they actually want. So most of our programs tend to be like 6 to 12 months, because I prefer a much more sustainable approach. Because if you push the body to lose weight very quickly or gain weight very quickly, using the process I explained with the science of fat loss with leptin, your body will push back quite hard, which is why it's important to do it sustainably. And also like psychologically, it makes it easier to maintain. So an easy rule of thumb would be like, if you diet for 12 weeks, you want to reverse diet for 12 weeks, would be the way I would look at that.
Yeah, and you know what? That reverse dieting phase, Charlie, would you agree that can sometimes be just as challenging as the dieting? Because, as you said, your body it's freaking starving. You want to eat more food, but you also have to have discipline there too. That if you kind of reverse out of it too quickly, there will be an increase in weight. And you know, as you said, that's kind of the cause of the yo-yo effect.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that just comes down to like measuring and tracking stuff. Like if you're tracking things, you know, like, oh shit, I've eaten 4 protein bars today, that's a bit much. Then you start to become aware of things, because often it's easy for us to stick our head in the sand and not track what we're actually doing effectively. So that'd be the biggest tip I would say for people, is to do that. And the other thing I'd say is like, set yourself another goal. So that almost referred to it when I competed before, is like, you set a big goal, you achieve it, and then it often leaves you very vacant and empty. So what's the best next thing? Set another goal. So like constantly set yourself new goals. So it might be like, set yourself a monthly goal, 3-month goal, and an end of year goal, for example, would be a good way to break things down. And it doesn't have to be like the way you look. It could be performance related. Like I know you mentioned earlier you went for a run. It could be like, okay, I want to beat my 5K time. I want to deadlift X amount of weight. It could be something very specific, performance related.
Unbelievable. And just for that, like busy working professional, Charlie, 40, 60 hours a week, what would you say then would be like some sensible training practices that they could implement if they can get to the gym maybe 4 times a week?
If they could do 4 times a week, the best training split, in my opinion, would be an upper lower training split. So like hypothetically, if you train Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, I would train upper body Monday, Tuesday, lower body, Wednesday off, upper body Thursday, Friday, lower body. Weekend, do some fun sports or do some cool shit. That would be pretty much it. Like people overcomplicate things. The worst thing you can do in terms of if you're in that setup is doing like a bro split in terms of training, like chest on Monday, back on Tuesday, which is what most people do.
Sure.
What actually builds progress is training frequency, because muscle tissue repairs within 48 hours. So if you only train your chest once, well, guess what? After 2 days, it's actually ready to be trained again. So you could train a full body training split 3-4 times a week and do like 1 day, 1 day off, if that makes sense. And it's just understanding that versus what most people do is just like follow the crowd of like, oh, it's Monday, let's do chest.
And not to mention too, if you do miss Monday's session, then it's 2 weeks again. It's a 2-week gap before you hit your chest again. So I'm all for that as well. Upper lower for 4 times, Charlie. And you kind of mentioned, so like obviously about like setting goals and you've one goal, but then have another goal in mind. And obviously for you, Charlie, would you mind just sharing more about like what kind of goals that you are currently working on? You mentioned growing, scaling the biz, but just in general, fitness, business, personal, everything related.
It's an interesting one. So personal ones would be improving personal relationships in the way I manage myself with other people, which sometimes when you get very like hyper driven certain things, you can neglect that. So like with family and loved ones, so that'd be a big one. My other goal is to get super shredded. And then the other goal is to get insanely fit and get good at boxing. So I've got another boxing session after this.
I saw your IG story. It's awesome.
Yeah, I haven't necessarily got like the right build for it, because I obviously carry a lot of muscle tissue, but it's fun. And like, that's what life's about, is like learning and putting yourself in comfortable positions and outside your comfort zone. So it's like, fuck it, I'll try it and I'll like learn. So that would be my personal side of things. From a business aspect, my big thing is obviously scaling the new business I have. And I'm really enjoying that in terms of helping more fitness professionals, because I love helping clients transform their lives, but it's also like nice now to be able to help other fitness coaches get great results with their clients and also help them with their livelihood. So that's been insane. But my big thing in terms of me is more like developing my mind. So for example, from a business perspective, is how can I become a better leader to the people who work for me? How can I think better in terms of the way I behave and the actions I decide and like decision making? Because that's ultimately what it comes down to after a certain period of time, is like making better choices rather than trying to like run around like a headless chicken. So it becomes down to being more organized, creating more time to have like clear headspace and having more structure, which will then help like everything in my personal life improve, and then also everything in my business aspect improve as well.
Unbelievable. I love that. You've got a different like 4 different pillars there you're working on simultaneously. And tell me just, Charlie, seeing as you have obviously moved over to Dubai, how do you find the lifestyle over there?
It's insane. So I can't say anything else other than that. Obviously, anyone watching the video, I've got Dubai Marina behind me. It's super gangster. It's cool. But yeah, it's insane. Like, you've got the best gyms in the world. It's like the best of the best. And I remember before I ever came here, one of my clients who's actually from Jordan, he said to me, like, Dubai is the best of the best. And I remember when I first came here, I went to a toilet and they had like Hermes like hand cream. I was like, this is legit. But it's true. Like, everything is insane. Everything's bigger and better. And it's a super inspiring, motivational place. It has its issues in the fact it can be very distracting because there's a lot to do, and like you can get led down the wrong path in that respect. But like, my focus is on my goals and what I want to achieve, and I'm in a great environment to do that. So I would say for anyone who wants to level up in life, there's a lot more opportunity here than there is maybe in Europe, because there's more growth-minded people being pulled together. The only downside I would say, I love sunshine, I love the sea, and love the outdoors. So like, the weather is awesome, other than in the summer, like I'm finding now, where it's like 45 degrees, and then with like humidity, it's like 50. Like, white people aren't designed for this. So like, that's a new interesting challenge. But to be honest, it's not that bad, because like, you work indoors most of the day. I train indoors. Like, it's not that bad.
Gotcha. Charlie, before we go on to some rapid fire, I love the way you mentioned there, just in general, about the growth mindset, but because you mentioned about the boxing and obviously stepping into the unknown, can you just describe, because a lot of people feel the same way walking into the gym for the first time, Charlie, can you just describe like maybe some of the thoughts that you were kind of feeling as you approach that first session?
I tell you what's one, it's just looking like a fool. Like, no one wants to look stupid, right? And like, even worse so when you're a bigger guy, you look athletic, and people might know who you are from social media or something like that. But that's one of the things, is like being open-minded. And the most beautiful thing in the world is when you don't give a flying fuck what anyone thinks. Like, you care because, like, say for example, on social media, I don't give a shit what anyone thinks. I care because obviously from like a business perspective, I am aware of what they think, but I don't really care if people like me or don't like me. Like, some people love me, which is awesome. Some people might not like me, which is their prerogative. And that's really the way you have to understand it. And if you put yourself out on social media as an example, you're always going to get people who lash out at you. And that is often, people will be horrible to you because of their own insecurities. And that comes with you as a person understanding maturity, that's why people behave like that, and understanding human psychology, which personally I think is a fascinating thing. And that's why like self-mastery and you achieving everything you want comes down to you mastering your own mind. And like, the only thing stopping you from achieving whatever you want is yourself. And that's why, like, for example, pretty much all the goals I said to you is focusing on me improving my mindset and the way I think and feel. Because if I can control that, then I can become unstoppable, because I have a relentless drive, I'm coachable, and I learn quickly. But if I can get out my own way more, then I become unstoppable.
Wow. Unbelievable. Charlie, let's just kind of wrap things up. So with a couple of rapid fire. I love that's awesome, man, about the mindset. Tell me, Charlie, what is the best book? Because you're an avid reader, I know. What's the best book you feel, or the most beneficial book you read in the last 6 to 12 months?
I actually read it last week, Happy Sexy Millionaire. So I think I referred to it earlier on.
Yeah,
so,
you referred to it earlier.
Yeah, that like, this is one thing I say with books, that only relevant when you get to a certain point in your life. So that book for me a few years ago, I'd be like, that's fucking makes no sense. Like, once you got money, you're in good shape, and you live in Dubai, you'd be like, fucking the cat who's got the cream, right? But like, sometimes it's not actually like that, and that's when you suddenly understand that. So the big thing I say with books is that books are only relevant to you at a certain time, which is why I buy so many books, because people recommend something to me and I won't buy it, and then I'll be like, I'll buy it, and then won't read it for probably ages, maybe not even years, because that might not be relevant to me yet. One book that I would recommend everyone listens to, or to 2 books I reckon everyone read, which I recommend to all my clients, are Atomic Habits and The Slight Edge by Jeff Olson, which are all about the daily choices you make. So you are an accumulation of your habits and what you decide to do on a daily basis. So you can improve those and improve your life.
Unbelievable. Awesome. Definitely going to check out but both I've read Atomic Habits, but both of the other ones, absolutely. Charlie, next one. When you hear the word successful, who is the first person you think of?
That's a great Elon Musk or Jeff
So,
Bezos.
yeah. Unbelievable, unbelievable. Charlie, what's your favorite movie?
Gladiator, like the opening war scene in Gladiator is sick. I like stuff with swords.
Oh, and Hans Zimmer's music there,
Yeah,
man.
yeah, yeah. Like it's
Unbelievable.
dramatic.
It's
Is it weird?
motivational.
I like listening to that in the gym sometimes. It's
Yeah,
dramatic.
it's inspiring. Unbelievable. Charlie, what do you feel actually, speaking of the gym, what's the most underrated gym exercise you feel more people should do or people should do more of?
A dumbbell split squat or a deadlift.
Amen on both of those. Yeah, most people avoid both because they freaking suck, but
Because
they're
they're
awesome,
hard.
man.
People don't
Yeah,
like the hard stuff.
yeah. It's easy to go to the gym when it's just chest pressing. I love it, man. And last rapid fire. Charlie, what's one question you wish people asked you more?
What makes you happy? Which is a strange one because I don't know what the answer is sometimes, and that's one of those things that I've learned is okay because everyone life is the pursuit of happiness and the pursuit of achieving things, and you not necessarily knowing what makes you happy is fine. I think as you understand that the adventure of life is a bit of a long-winded answer, but and that's the point of you being driven to progress as you get the opportunity to seek new opportunities, new experiences, and like discover what the world is about, if that makes sense.
Oh, I love it. That growth again, that growth mindset. Charlie, I want to acknowledge you. Thank you so much for coming
Pleasure.
on, just sharing your knowledge, your expertise around mindset, training, nutrition. Just very, very quickly, Charlie, what are 1 to 3 takeaways you'd like our listeners to implement?
Number one thing I'd say is consistency compounds over time. So like
Yeah.
I'm not genetically gifted physically, mentally, or anything like that. I've just been very relentless for a while. And like all the stuff that I can do now, like say from a business perspective, like I 3-4 years ago, I wasn't that great at training people in person. I didn't know how to run Facebook ads. I didn't know how to really use social media. I didn't know how to build websites. I didn't know how to run tech stuff. I didn't know how to manage teams. I've got like 50 employees I manage. Like I didn't know how to do anything, but I learned all these things by putting in the reps and like working and being consistent and not getting overwhelmed. So the most important thing I think everyone needs to understand is like consistency compounds over a period of time. The second thing I'd say is like be very aware of the language you use about yourself. So like don't say like I cannot. It's more like I can't yet, if that makes sense. So I am not good at training people yet. I'm not good at building my biceps yet. Like be aware of that rather than putting yourself down, because then it comes to self-proclaiming prophecy. And then the last thing I would say is like the biggest influence on you achieving what you want is who you surround yourself with and also who you model. And by what I mean by modeling is like not in front of a camera, but like the reason I have achieved certain things is because I will go to the best person in the world with that one specific thing and basically pay them to teach me what they know. So then I can basically model that person. I'll then go to the next person in that specific field and learn from them. So like I will probably have like 5-6 people like coaching me in my life in specific different aspects. So I can constantly improve quicker and quicker. And the way I explain it is that like these people might have 20-30 years in that one specific field. Whereas like I can just steal that knowledge as quickly as possible rather than like I could figure out my own, like all the information is free on the internet. Whereas like I can save the most valuable thing I have, which is time, by just going to work with those people directly.
From level 10 to level 20 without having to go through the
Yeah.
steps of the ladder. I love that. I love that. Charlie, final 2 questions I ask all my guests. I'm big into morning routines, Charlie. What does the first 30 to 60 minutes of your day look like?
Wake up, coffee. I have a drink with nootropics and electrolytes, and I do at work for an hour and a half. So like, just get up, drink, like work straight away, bang. Like no fucking around. Like one of the most ridiculous things I think sometimes is people have like really woo-woo morning routines if they need to spend an hour stretching and doing yoga and like singing kumbaya. It's like that's great if it works for you, but like if you're traveling and something throws your routine out, the world collapses. Whereas like with me, I think you need to be fairly rigid to be able to combat those things, if that makes sense.
Awesome. And finally, Charlie, last question, because this is the Lifestyle Lifters show. Charlie, what's your definition of living a successful lifestyle?
being able to do what you want, when you want, with who you want.
Unbelievable. Awesome. Charlie, thank you so much. Where can people learn more about you and what you offer?
So check out my podcast, which is The Shredded Show. So we go through loads of fitness tips on there. There's like 300 episodes. We've got some like the world's best guests in there in terms of people actually coach me as well. So I'd go and have it up, check that out. Please subscribe, leave a 5-star review. And then check me out on Instagram and TikTok, Charlie Johnson Fitness. And the new business coaching business we have is a 7-figure scaling system. So you check that on Instagram and TikTok, that's there as well. And if you need any help with anything, just fire me a message on any of those platforms and we can have a chat about how I can help you.
Unbelievable. Charlie, I'll post the links in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on.
Pleasure, dude. Thank you so much.
Unbelievable stuff. Thank you so much.